I'm William Andreessen, host of Speaking with Students, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows in the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Ninth Grade Experience Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Dutchko. Ninth grade can be challenging. Let's experience it together. And today on this episode, we're going to start hopefully a series here that we're going to conclude our 2022-2023 school year with. And we're going to look back on some of the students that we interviewed during their freshman year, which would have been the 1920 school year, which was the year that COVID came and kind of stopped the school year. So we're going to hope to get some good insights from looking back on what students were involved in then and see if they kind of stuck with it. And today's first episode of that is we're going to revisit the freshman basketball team that are now the varsity basketball team. And we have Chase Muckey and Dylan Darville joining us on this episode to kind of recap their 4 years of Emmaus basketball and to kind of talk about where they were as freshmen, kind of talk about their season this year, kind of their experiences here at Emmaus, and where do they go forward with basketball now that they're done, which I thought was an interesting question and a good thing for our athletes that are just starting off their career, kind of trying to figure out, so like, will I still love this sport at the end of high school? So lots of cool insights from Dylan and Chase here as they share and even bring up some things that we had talked about in our episode in season 2. So you can go back and look at that episode and all of our previous episodes at ninthgradeexperience.com. If you just search in the search bar Darville or Muckey, you can find those episodes and listen to that if you want to listen to it before we go here. But they were really successful in their freshman year, and they still hold the record for having the most audio downloads of the podcast too. So, people love the basketball episodes, so we're revisiting those guys now. So, again, you can go to ninthgradeexperience.com to find out all the other episodes of the podcast, and hopefully this will be the first in our series of looking back at the class of 2023 here. So, without any more ado, here we go with Dylan and Chase. So welcome everybody to this episode of the Ninth Grade Experience Podcast. We are starting our senior wrap-ups here. So we're starting to try to get people that have been on this show 4 years ago during their freshman year, getting them to look back on what Emmaus High School has been like for them during this time. They had quite the experience, all of our seniors. So we're getting them to look back a little bit. And we're actually starting off today with in the very beginning of the podcast, it was all audio only. So these guys were one of the last people that were on an audio only version of the podcast. And I don't know if it's sad for me or good for them, but they still hold the highest number of downloads and listens on the audio only podcast. So 4 years later, they're coming back. So hopefully we can get the audio and the video going here. So we're joined by two members of the Emmaus High School basketball team. We have Chase Muckey and we have Dylan Darville. So thanks a lot, guys, for joining us.
Thanks for having us. No problem.
So you don't have to go listen to it right now, but in the episode 4 years ago, we did it at the end of their season. So Coach Luckenbill was their freshman coach at that time, and he recommended some players. If you listen to the episode, there was one more guy, but he transferred, we think, to Arizona. We don't know if he's still playing basketball, but hopefully he is. That was Daniel Charlo. There were other guys on the team that are still on the team now that are, that waited all the way through to your senior year. So you guys can kind of start off, whoever wants to go first. Just kind of like, obviously we had you at the end of your freshman year. So what has basketball been like for you guys for the last 3 years here at Emmaus High School?
It's been fun. I mean, we've obviously stayed around the same guys and all like that. So we become more of a family and stuff like that. It's just been a fun ride. A lot of competition too.
Yeah, I think I lost my sophomore year to injury, so I don't really think about my sophomore year, but definitely the last 2 years. I mean, when we were freshmen, like we always talked about, like, because when we were freshmen, our varsity team was not good.
Yeah.
And we had a good season, and we had guys that were playing up on JV. So we thought we could like bring the program back to where it was with the Cackleries and like Zach Sable. Yeah. So I think the last 2 years, that's been like a big thing for us, and it was cool to be a part of, like, winning back.
So in your freshman year, you guys did go 20-1 during the regular season. You won the end of the year tournament at Spooky Nook. Yep. So you finished that season at 25-1. I remember when I listened back to the episode, you were beating teams by almost an average of like 20 points a game. So you were really dominant that freshman year. And I think everyone was kind of looking towards these last couple of years for you guys to kind of, establish yourselves here in the Lehigh Valley. And you went on this year to win the regular season EPC championship. You qualified for states for the first time since those, the Sable years. So what did it mean for you guys to kind of get the program maybe back up to where it was several years ago?
It means a lot, especially for the young kids. Hopefully we're back on the right track. We have a lot of young talent coming up and stuff like that. And it meant a lot to us as seniors too, finally getting there and having that experience, stuff like that. Even though playoffs didn't go our way, I think it was still a huge experience going to states and stuff like that. A lot of fun.
Yeah, like you said, it was kind of bittersweet because we felt we could have done better. Obviously, I feel like we could have won EPCs and districts, so to not win those was kind of sucky, but it was a fun season, and it was cool to bring, like I said, winning back and give that experience to the younger guys and hopefully keep it going.
So if you look back to your freshman year, you guys finished up that season. And I think at the end of the episode, we talked about what all the other stuff you guys were involved in or what you were looking to do. Like, could you have seen the next 3 years going the way that it did? Now, obviously the second year you didn't play and it was the year with COVID. So like, obviously nobody saw that at the time of how long that would impact it. But like, how would you look back, like from the end of that freshman year, looking kind of what happened? Would you say that, it went kind of the way you thought, better than you thought? Maybe not as good as you hoped for?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't really remember what I was expecting through my high school career as a freshman. I knew we definitely had a solid group of guys coming up, but I could say it went the way I thought it was going to. I mean, obviously sophomore year was COVID, but like junior and senior year, we had good records and stuff like that. So
yeah, it was definitely different for me because I obviously didn't think I was going to play football, and now I'm playing football in college, and like my focus kind of shifted away from basketball a little bit.
Yeah,
because my freshman year I wanted to play basketball in college, so that was definitely a big shift for me. But in terms of like the team, I mean, I guess I this is kind of what I expected. I definitely thought we were going to win a lot, and that's what we did, and we did break some records, I think. So
yeah, and I think looking back on the season, you had started off really well. Like I think it might have been like 10-0, and even like your junior year as well too. You started off strong, and then kind of as the league season picked up, it kind of evened itself out a little bit. With the competition, you were playing, all the different teams, but, to have the experience, you guys played at the PPL Center this year, you played in the state playoffs, those are cool memories to kind of take with you, even if you decide not to play basketball anymore, which we'll get to at the end. But like, what are some of the highlights of those couple of years for you guys, after that freshman year?
Definitely this year. I mean, obviously playing at PPL and going to states and stuff like that, that's huge. It was a really cool experience. And, especially being a starter out there, being a captain, it was really fun, exciting too.
Yeah, the PPL was cool. I kind of forgot about it until we actually qualified and we won. And I remembered that because that was always like a cool thing for me. Like my freshman year, I went to those games and I always wanted to play in it. So that was a cool experience. And it was just like it was a fun season. Like this was one of the most fun seasons of basketball I've ever had. So I was just grateful. It was a lot of fun. Like the group of guys I liked a lot.
Ken, when you're that competitive, like when you get to that level and you guys are like really competitive in the league, can you like, is it still fun? Or do you feel like the pressure of like, now that we have to perform, like we've basically played these 4 years, like we had a really successful freshman year, people are kind of looking at us building towards this like end of the year, but like, can you still have fun while that's going on?
I think that's the love of the game is like the more competitive it gets, the more fun it gets too. And the more we come closer as a team and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something we were better at this year is just like enjoying it more. And like not worrying too much about the wins and losses. And I think that's why we were more consistent. I mean, obviously it ended poorly, but last year we started 10-0 and then we went 6-6 to end the season, I think. And like this year, I felt like it was pretty consistent. Like we dropped a few games, but we never like played extremely poorly. And I think part of that was just like we enjoyed being around each other and like we enjoyed coming to practice and we just like had fun and weren't stressing too much about that stuff.
So if you were looking back at your freshman year, and we'll just stick with basketball for right now, but we'll talk about like overall as well too. But like if you're looking back on your freshman year of basketball, like what was there something you would have done differently? Something that you'd like think about from your freshman year that was like, wow, that was like something that was really important for like my basketball going forward, or like how it impacted how you all played or came together. So looking back on that freshman year, was there something that you kind of maybe can look back on now and be like, wow, that was a good pivotal moment for like how we went, or like even your own development as basketball players?
I think there was a lot of similarities to the freshman team and going on to like, especially this year with like how close we all were. I can't remember anything like pivotal, but like I think it was just us being as close as we were that really brought us together and stuff like that. It made us all better.
Yeah, I think our freshman team, like we got used to playing with a bunch of guys that like were really good, and we learned to play unselfish. Like that was a big thing Luck and Bill preached, and I think that like kind of transitioned to our varsity games. I think that was big. And I think like for me personally, I was disappointed. I made the freshman team. I wanted to make the JV team as a freshman, and that was a disappointing thing for me. But it was really important for my growth as like a person and a player. So I'm kind of grateful for that.
And it's interesting you brought that up, because if I remember correctly, in the interview that we did 4 years ago, you actually mentioned that same thing about like how when you have all these different people coming together that were, you know, maybe one of the best players on their middle school team or that kind of thing, and then kind of giving up a little bit. And if you watched the varsity team this year, you know, there were 4 or 5 guys that could have scored double figures in every game, which is not something that was popular, like common among the Lehigh Valley teams. Like, you know, not to mention the school down the road, but they had the one guy that, you know, averaged a lot of points. But you guys, you know, there were nights where it was either you or Chase would, you know, score in double figures, or, you know, Will was scoring a lot, or Demetric. So like there was always like that. It seemed like more of a team than opposed to like one guy. And that's, you know, thinking back to when we talked as you guys as freshmen, there was a big conversation about like how you all kind of came together. So it is kind of interesting that you mentioned it again 4 years later.
Yeah. I mean, it's something we talk about a lot, like at our program. That's just like Yoder and Luckable talk about all the time, like playing as a team. And that was definitely big for us. I mean, there was games where like Chase, like the Parkland game where Chase like had like 12 points to start the game, and Teague was big in our Governor Mifflin game, and Jake was big in our Freedom game. And like, so everyone had big games that were important to us winning. And I think that was definitely important for us.
Did you ever feel, Chase, like that, you know, a lot of the spotlight was, you know, on Dylan or on Will because they scored a lot and, you know, they were pretty like well known, but like, did you ever feel like overshadowed? Like as I watched, because, you know, people that know the podcast know that my son played freshman basketball. So I got to watch a lot of the games, and like Chase, I always thought like was like the glue guy. Like he would always be the guy that was playing like defense on one of their best players. He didn't necessarily have to shoot a lot, but, you know, you always found a way to score when they needed you to score. So like, how did you kind of grow into that role for yourself kind of going forward?
I think it was just my other teammates trusting me and stuff like that, and building my own confidence and everything like that. So I never felt like I was overshadowed. I feel like everyone on the team deserved their own spotlight at some point in the season and stuff like that. And again, it was just trusting each other, being unselfish. You know, it didn't matter who put up 15 points that game or anything like that. So
yeah, because it was I think it was in the playoffs in the Freedom game. You were close to being the leading scorer, right? Like you were like almost there, or if you were the leading scorer. And like, you know, in a game like that where the state playoffs were on the line, you know, again, you guys didn't have like the one guy that was going to be like, he's going to take 25 shots and get to 40 points. Like it was so spread out. And then I think in that game, you hit a couple threes and like scored on like fast break layups and stuff. So like, you know, that trust that you talked about. So I think, you know, you mentioned that, and it was like a hallmark of your team and the way that you guys progressed all throughout. Like, do you think, let's say if like you were not as successful as you were your freshman year, do you think that would have been something that would have been a little bit harder to kind of build up, or just, you know, you had that success early on, you guys knew what you needed to do. You kind of knew, you know, I would imagine you guys played together all throughout. So like, you know, how was that? Like, do you think it would have been different if you were not as successful early on?
Yeah, I think it was good to get used to winning, you know, at a young age in the freshman team. And it really corresponded this year because we wanted to compete. We hate losing. It was good to just, you know, have that. My bad. Winning your freshman year and getting used to winning would like build that to the senior year and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it set a standard for us of like just winning and playing as a team and like playing unselfish. I think even sometimes like guys were too selfless during the season. Like I always told Chase to shoot more and be more aggressive and like just like play his game. Yeah. So it's great to be a part of a team like that.
And that was definitely something you noticed too, like that you guys were always passing and moving the ball around and that kind of stuff. And it did feel like, I agree with you, like just watching it felt like, you would be like somebody would be under the basket and you'd be like kicking it out. And I'm like, why don't they just shoot the ball? But like, if you've been with the same guys for 4 years and you can trust like where everyone is, it kind of makes it a lot easier. So one more basketball related question. So we have some kids that maybe are watching this that are not in ninth grade yet. They're coming up to ninth grade. So if you were to talk and give like suggestions or pointers to somebody that is either going to try out for freshman or maybe a ninth grader that thinks that they might be able to try out for like even like JV or something next year, what advice would you give that student?
Just work hard and be confident, and build relationships with your teammates and stuff like that. It's important.
Yeah, I think just like take advantage of this summer, because I mean you can get so much better in the next however so months until the tryouts, and when tryouts come, like just compete and be unselfish. In our program, like the coaches really take liking to people who are unselfish and just play hard. So
yeah. So we also want to ask about just looking back on 4 years at Emmaus. So you're getting ready to graduate here in the next couple months. So I'm sure you're both really excited about getting out of here and moving on. So if you were looking back at your time at Emmaus, not basketball, what would you say kind of, if you were to think back or somebody would ask you, like, how would you talk about your time at Emmaus, not basketball? What would you say?
I mean, other than basketball is a big part of it, but other than it, I still had a bunch of fun and stuff like that in classes and stuff like that. But I think basketball really brought out a different, because you make so much more friends in school and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think I'm just grateful to be like in a school like this. There's just like so many opportunities, like sports wise, like extracurriculars, like clubs and stuff. And I'm glad that I kind of like tried a bunch of different things and like met a lot of different people.
And then the same question, but this one's not the basketball one, but like if you were to give advice to a freshman that's starting out now, maybe one that's here or one that's coming up next year, what piece of advice or, good thing about Emmaus would you let them know, like as they're coming up, to not, to focus on at high school, or to kind of not worry about when they get to high school?
I don't got anything. Just work hard.
Yeah. Definitely your freshman year, people mess up their grades a lot. So definitely focus on taking care of your freshman year grades, because that makes the rest of your time here easy. And just like don't be afraid to like try things and like go to clubs or just like talk to people. Everyone's nice here. Like upperclassmen aren't scary. Upperclassmen are nice. So yeah, just don't be afraid.
So lots of good advice, and it's advice that we hear all the time. So it's nice to kind of hear from you guys looking back in the 4 years, and, we're not going to relive the COVID years and all that other stuff. Yeah. Hopefully we're all past that and moving forward. So a last question here. And we kind of talked about this a little bit beforehand, but I think it's an interesting question for like we talk a lot in the show about like freshman athletes. So these guys and girls are just getting ready to start their high school career. Now you have reached the end of your basketball career. Like, so what do you do with basketball now? Like, can you go out and just like mess around with friends and have like a pickup game of basketball? Like, I'm sure you were practicing all the time, maybe playing AAU, maybe playing on competitive teams, all these other things. But now like basketball is done. So like, what part does basketball play in your life, or do you think it will play moving forward?
I think I can still go out there and just, have fun with different people and stuff like that. It was definitely a big part, and looking back on it, it's always going to be like a heartache and stuff like that, the season ending the way it was. But my love hasn't changed for the sport. I'm still going to go out there and have fun and just play it whenever I want to.
Yeah, I think the great thing about our team is that like we all did genuinely love basketball. Like even the kids that like didn't play as much, they love basketball. Like we just love coming to practice every day. And I mean, in the summer we played pickup with each other, and I'm sure like we'll keep doing that this summer and maybe years to come. Like we all just like love the sport. So I mean, I plan to keep playing in my free time a lot.
And what do you guys have going on for after graduation? I don't know if both of you have stuff lined up yet. I know Chase told me before he started that he's playing lacrosse for the first time. So, if you know Will Barber, he's on the basketball team, but he's a really good lacrosse player. So maybe he got to somebody. I know he was asking everybody if they wanted to play lacrosse. So after lacrosse is done, what do you have lined up for next year? Do you know yet?
Yeah, going to college, hopefully Penn State.
And what are you going to study?
Business or engineering.
So business and engineering. And Dylan, how about you? I know there's been a lot.
Yeah.
You've been all out there, but it's all nice to kind of let people know.
Yeah, I'm doing track right now too. So
track. All right. So
that's something pretty cool.
Now, is that your first time doing track?
I did it when I was younger. My dad did track in college, so I kind of wanted to try it in high school.
So so I'm going to ask you a question, and we might not put this one on, but was your dad the javelin thrower?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because Cole played basketball with your brother.
Yep.
And we remembered that somebody in your family was a really good javelin thrower.
Yeah. So my dad threw at Lehigh. He was a walk-on at Lehigh. And then me and my brother both went to the Junior Olympics for javelin when we were younger, middle school, elementary school.
All right. So then, so there was the javelin story there.
Yeah.
Because I remember when we talked your freshman year, you were actually, I think, going to try out for baseball.
Yeah. Yeah. I did try out for baseball
in the spring. So lots of different things going on there. And then, after high school, you're off to Yale for football.
Yeah, I recently committed to Yale, so I'm looking forward to that.
So that's cool. I don't know if you probably wouldn't be able to see it on the video, but he has the Yale wristband on that I kind of caught a glimpse of real fast. Yep. Now he's hiding it, so he doesn't want it to be on.
I got it.
But so it was great to kind of catch back up with you. Having sitting there for the season, getting to watch all the games because my son was involved was awesome. So it was great to see your development. And then it's funny to look back at freshman year and kind of where you were and that conversation. And now here we are 4 years later. So Chase and Dylan, thanks a lot for joining us today, and good luck in the future with your sports and with your college and everything else you guys want to do.
Thank you so much.